I'd like to call this workshop to order, please. The first thing we'll do is we will do the pledge. We'll open with the pledge.
Gotta do the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Gotta repaint the wall. Gotta keep up appearances.
First ordinance we'll be hearing, we'll be working on is ordinance 2019-12, APFO open space, possible changes to the town code, sections 25-5 and 98-23. As our procedure in the workshops, we will not be taking comments from the public at this time, from the audience, unless we feel it's necessary. But at this point, the purpose of the workshop is for us to work through it and for you to be the observer. So, open space. Tom?
I mean, there's some essential context here I think we need to be sure everyone's aware of. How it developed to the point it is now and how it may have
Yeah,
changed
Tom
along the
sent,
way.
and I think it's in our packet.
Let's see.
Well, that had to do with,
That's the other one. Thank you. So can you, Tom, just kind of do a brief overview of the APFO and its, the open space, how they relate in your interpretation? Because I think I have I think I was a little different in my interpretation.
So the current APFO states that one of the facilities that is measured for adequacy at the time of concept development plan approval is open space. What the current ordinance says is that if the Parks Board, and I'm paraphrasing here,
Thank you.
certifies that the town does not have adequate open space facilities, that development plans, in order to be approved, must meet what I'll call a waiver threshold. The development itself, according to the ordinance, the way it's written, must provide 3 acres per 100 new residents being introduced by the new development, or a pro rata share of that. In order to qualify for a waiver that this body can vote to provide to allow a development to go forward. The Parks Board has certified that the town is not adequate and has provided a specific number of acres, 83 acres shy of being adequate. The measure for adequacy is also, but throughout the town, I believe 3 acres per 100 persons, residents. I have rendered an opinion that adequate facilities ordinance applies to any property or any new development that proposes new residents. That's my opinion. Others have disagreed, obviously, but that's the opinion that I have rendered at the request of town staff, the mayor, and ultimately the town council. The effect of that has been, obviously, to not only halt certain development plans that are in the process, in one stage or another of being proposed, but specifically for certain properties, particularly the focus has been the DTZ. And this ordinance that you have in front of you attempts to address that. Certain of those properties are too small to offer up enough acreage to meet the waiver threshold. And so what this ordinance is designed to do, and I'll turn it over to Barney to better explain it because engineering came up with this. The effect of this would be to allow certain properties to relax the waiver threshold, to allow certain properties within the DTZ to move forward, in effect trading off the amount of commercial in a mixed-use proposed development that it proposes for open space through a formula that has been developed by engineering.
Okay.
So, Barney, in the near term, I mean, to the extent that we could consider it imminent, is there any change in the amount of Parks and Rec dedicated land, open space, or is the formula and the total acreage and the deficit, I mean, that's what we're working with for the near term?
That is, I mean, there's things being thrown out there like Harrison Lagier and, some other properties that, if they came into town, that they could reduce the number of, parks that were deficient.
Right. Okay, but that's an unknown at this point. That's not
Correct.
a reality yet. Okay.
83 acres is quite a bit.
Right.
And I mean, we're essentially about to enter the infill stage of Mary's development. That was the whole focus. That was part and integral to the vision that we created when we updated the master plan in 2013. We said, unless there's a compelling reason to do so, we're not necessarily in favor of annexation. We already have infrastructure in place, and we have some open space. We know that we want to revitalize downtown. We know we need more retail space. When you talk to MML and consultants about what are healthy ratios of retail and commercial to residential, we're only slightly more than half of what that healthy ratio is. That's not a sustainable condition going forward. And that was part of the motivation that caused us to say, we need a downtown vision plan. We need to call on some professionals to come in and speak with us and help us see the bigger picture of this, especially if they've done this kind of work with other communities, more that are our size, as opposed to a large Montgomery County urban area. And it was very insightful. But the fact remains that in order to move forward with that, we're talking about existing conditions and what's most appropriate to be complementary to that. So this is to clarify those existing conditions. And one of the things we've had in place for many, many years is adequate public facilities. It's critical. It's schools. It's on and on and on. So this is very, very important. But the majority of our postage stamp downtown parcels are very, very small. The downtown zone is laid out in the 2013 master plan.
Well, I think that's why I asked John for this. So the pink,
That's our current zoning map,
That's our current zoning
and the
map.
pink
So
is
the
the
pink-
downtown zone.
is the DTC.
Okay. But don't we have additional acreage around Center Street? We do in the well, I may be interpreting it incorrectly, the comprehensive land use map in the master plan.
Bill, you may be referring to the priority area that extends up Center Street.
Yeah, we have, in
That's not
this,
the downtown.
that's not considered downtown.
All right, so this is more confined, okay.
So it's even. So my question is, and I appreciate the effort and the formula. We have an issue with the fact that, you know, almost every parcel is different in here when you look at this. I mean, how can we, I'm having a hard time getting my head around trying to do, is there an easier way to do this without doing the formula? Can we, like we were talking, I asked you the question yesterday, we were talking about in the area where the bank is, the old bank building, or you were using the example to me where we were going to put the commercial residential in where the train station is. So in essence, they would also qualify that. However, there is open space there that would give them their requirement or the waiver that they would need, most of it, I think you said, pretty much up.
Wait,
most of it.
are you referencing a conversation that we
I'm sorry.
don't know about?
No, I
maybe you could
asked-
fill us in about
Okay,
this context.
I asked, it was a conversation I had with Barney about this and trying to understand it a little bit better. And he was using the example, for instance, if you looked and said, if you remember, the concept that was brought in, I think Mick died, that was brought in said about using the railroad, the rail station,
Right.
he had commercial and then he had put apartment or he had residential on the top.
Right.
So when you look at that, of course, he would have to qualify. However, part of his open space, I think you explained it to me, Barney, would be in the open area, in the train station area.
Right, if they designate
Plus,
it.
in the bank side, part of their open space will be the caboose, where the caboose is, and some of that area, correct?
Yeah, I'm not sure I'd say the train station, but we talked about the rail trail.
Yes, the rail trail.
It'd be portion of the rail trail for the rail yard, the caboose, like you can have some of the existing things that are already
Right.
there that could count towards that open space.
Right.
Well, yeah, so let's clarify that. So if there's 83, we're 83 acres in the negative, rails to trail is already there. So you're saying that if they redevelop the rail yard, they get credit as though they put that in, or what? Is that what you?
Well,
Doesn't that already count towards the open space we have?
So
what the
not
park
the
is-
open space, not the rail trail portion that's on their property.
Mm-hmm.
That's what would count towards their
Okay.
open space needs.
Okay.
And
And that's not included in the 83 acres at this point.
No.
Oh, because you're talking about where if the rail trail connects.
right.
yeah, again, that's not public space. So it's,
Right.
you know, it's.
Yeah,
it's-
they'd be giving an easement. So you're talking about the rail trail where it stops now, if they connected it across Main Street, that open space.
Yes.
Okay, exactly. Because I was actually going to ask that question pertaining to if something got developed at Prospect Place and they put a rail trail in to connect, that would count as open space too. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. So even if it's not necessarily on their property, but they're paying to do it, would that,
Well, that would have to be approved at planning commission when
Yeah,
you
okay,
submit a plan. I mean, we'd
Okay.
have to figure out what the open space and what you would allow.
thank you for the clarification.
I feel the downtown contribution is going to be very small, no matter what it is, to the 83 acre deficit. So, you know, when we go forward, so when we go forward, we should think what's best for the downtown's economic development. We can't negate it, you know, any contributions to the open space, but you're not going to make up 83 acres downtown.
No.
I mean,
no,
it's no matter what you
No,
do.
we know that.
Right, no, I understand that, but we have to make the right decisions. We have to make the right decisions based on what's best for the downtown economy.
Yeah, so just to give you an example, Harrison Ligier, I think they're talking about 85 acres of open space coming to the town, or 85 acres total. We'd have to figure out the actual open space portion of it. But that could essentially, as far as break us even. From that point, then, if something new comes in, they're adding residents, then our 83 acres that just got broken even, now we're going to need more for that development. So you would bring in the amount that you need for that development. Or what this is designed to do in the downtown area, if you provide commercial, it will help offset that need for a lot of that open space. So this could help reduce it down to about 5% of the property.
If a portion of the property is commercial or retail on the first floor, then that reduces, you know, the number of units above and so forth, and so it's less of a load.
Correct.
Right. So that's what we're trying to decide, because the downtown zone, does allow for a mixed use. And it doesn't apply to the mixed use that we have now. It's just the downtown zone has a mixed use component to it.
Yeah,
So,
it requires it, doesn't it?
yes. Thank you. So what we're trying to figure out is how much of that area will be determined as open space. So some of these places, if they redevelop, there ain't no room because they're squashed together. So how do we do that?
That was my point.
So that's why the formula is so important, because it's based on the size of the parcel, right?
I still think it's a little, I still think
Well,
it's
that was
a
my
little
point,
too large.
was we should do what's best for what is best for downtown and not try to make up the 83 acres in this decision, because you're not going to,
There's no
it's
way.
going to be insignificant.
Right.
Wait, but from a practical standpoint, I see two options.
Closer to your mic.
From a practical standpoint, I see two options, and there may be more, but I'll put that out there for our discussion. Given the relative small size of the downtown area, and given the minuteness of most of the parcels, and this property is essentially already developed. Some of it's vacant, but it's already developed, it's got structure in place and so forth, okay? It would be a further impediment on the space restrictions that those parcels have to come back now and overlay an open space requirement on them
Agreed,
and make it retroactive.
agreed.
So it's one option to do that, but that seems impractical to me.
And that's my point.
In terms of our modest downtown area, I think, given the experience we've had with very successful downtown festivals and so forth, we aggregate and congregate, and there are staging areas and there are congregation areas between Main Street, Rail Yard, and other areas that work very, very nicely. And the objective is to get more people downtown to see how beautiful and special it is, and so they can appreciate it too. So that's working. I don't want to alter with that, okay? Secondarily, formulas allow you to be even and consistent, you know, with everyone, but we already have a downtown reality in place. I don't see that we gain anything for the benefit of the community or the town in changing that.
Right.
And changing what, the formula?
Well, in utilizing a formula that now retroactively says, even if it's reduced, now, unless it's very, very modest, the reduction is such that I want to see an alternative that aggregates the combined amount of open space that the total acreage would require.
Well, Isn't
we
the
have to do
formula
that.
relative? That's kind of the purpose of it, Barney. The formula allows it to be flexible according to the size of the footprint, meaning it's not, you know, if Rob Scranton has a couple acres over in the rail yard, it's not gonna be the same amount of open space as somebody that's doing an infill development in between two buildings, S and K.
Correct.
I mean, so that's why
Right,
so
and,
we're talking
and,
about
confused.
yes, so what we'd like you to do, I think that's one of the reasons that we're here, is we want the engineer to explain, give us an example.
Yeah, can you run?
Formula, maybe two, maybe one that's bigger, so that, because most of us actually understand this, but except for the engineering part, except for
Sure.
that mathematical physics stuff, which is what
Okay,
I
so-
would like to understand.
One example is, there was a plan that we saw, I guess I could talk about a plan that hasn't come to you all before, but has two buildings on it, and the first floor of both buildings are commercial retail, and the second and third floors are residential. And you have a total of 16 apartments, so 8 apartments in each of the two buildings, four per floor. And then you have 4,000 square foot of commercial in each of the two first floors.
And what's the acreage of the parcel?
Acreage of the parcel,
Trying to pull that up right now. I think it's just a little over half an acre.
I think it's about an acre,
Is it an acre?
maybe 3/4 of an acre, something like that.
An acre or less?
Yeah, yeah. But if you do the math, I think you'll find that you need 5%. It gets down to close to, if not down to the minimum, which is 5% of the land. So 5% of the acre, or 3/4 of an acre, is all that would be needed. And so,
Nothing like zero. It's insignificant.
yeah, well,
5% of an acre is.
it'd be about 2,000
Square feet.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
Smaller than the first floor of this
Fi-
building.
Footprint of this first floor, roughly, yeah, smaller. So, and that's for an acre. If you look at these, a lot of these parcels, I mean, they're less than 5,000 square feet
Yeah,
per thing. So that's going to be a very small amount to take 5% of 5,000 square feet. I mean, that's only 250 square feet.
yeah.
So one small room would take care of open space. You could, if you wanted to put a minimum, I don't know if you can do an exemption for, 5,000 square foot or less property, that they would be exempt from this. There's.
But the question is, what would that space be? I mean, like, it's open space, but it wouldn't be usable.
Oh, it could be, have you ever been to the little pocket park by the elementary school? Yeah, gazebo.
Yeah, that's.
I
fine.
mean, you have a little, garden.
Or like the train station, you have a little plaza right in front with where the tree goes now. I mean,
Yeah,
that-
you
that
basically,
can
it's
count
just
as
a little.
The plaza would count as the open space.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, a bench
Right,
and
wait,
little.
which plaza?
in front of this train station.
Right, but between, in the rail yard, locked,
Right.
right. That's the biggest contribution to open
It's all
space you're gonna have
concrete.
downtown.
It's all concrete, but it could still count as open space.
Okay,
Right.
that's,
Well, wait, in the vision plan, it was grassed, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it
it's
was
a-
Yeah.
like an amphitheater, et
Yeah,
cetera.
that
That was
may-
on a different parcel than this.
that's on a different parcel.
I'm saying what's there now. what
Right,
we
okay, okay.
redid.
Okay.
I mean, that's a
What's there now
small
could
thing.
count.
That's more than 250 square feet.
As long as it hasn't been counted for something else.
Right.
So,
So are you saying open space can be concrete?
Can be.
Yeah, I think it can be.
But then what's the point of the park certifying?
I think our code says at least 50% should be green space.
Oh, okay.
But
I
it
knew
could
there
be,
was
it could be a ball field, it could be basketball courts. I mean, it could be part of a park,
Rails to trail is not all.
Well, I know, but it's not, impervious surface.
so each designated open space, does it have to be 50% green? No.
Not necessarily each one.
Okay, okay.
I think we're getting off topic.
I think that's, well, no, I think it's actually.
No, I think it's important. We got to figure this out.
I'm saying, but the rails to trail, that actually is considered
You brought that up,
impervious.
but we're not talking about that. I'm just trying to clarify whether it can all be concrete. That's, which is actually pretty relevant to me. I don't know. So that's a separate part of the ordinance or a different ordinance, you're saying? Percent green space, or is that part of the?
That's part of the 9823.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's part of 9820.
All right, good.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yes.
This is actually based on a conversation I had with Tom because I asked him to explain the difference between the APFO and open space. And open space always applies, and APFO only applies when we're in a deficit. But would open space 9823 still apply here, or this ordinance, or is this only applying to APFO because they're different?
So the second half of this ordinance purports to make 98-23 applicable to the DTC and essentially imposes the same formula for open space, whether we're inadequate or we're not, basically.
So essentially, what you've done is to propose a formula that scales to give consideration to smaller properties and provide an allowance there. It still goes back though, and it's somewhat of a concern of mine. It changes an existing condition that hasn't been enforced.
What do you mean? What do you mean?
I'm looking at the downtown zone. I'm looking at.
So
What do you
what do you
mean?
mean it's changing an existing?
If we go forward with this ordinance,
Uh-huh.
then this would apply for that existing area.
And so what's,
Where it hasn't before.
oh, you're saying people who had to comply with it before?
They haven't had to comply with it before, so now they are going to. But the open space part of it, I mean, it was added, so they have to, whenever something is added, you have to comply with what is now. You can't grandfather, so you have to go with what exists now, the ordinances, the text amendments that are now in existence. So when they redevelop, yeah, they're going to be subject to this.
That's always how new laws are, no matter what they are, local,
Right.
state, federal.
Right.
So how long have we had APFO, and how long have we had open space?
98.
You've had open space in the APFO since 2007
Okay.
or thereabouts. It was introduced through 2 ordinances in 2007.
Okay.
You've had the APFO for longer than that.
Isn't that even before the downtown, we had the downtown zone?
I don't know in the downtown zone from memory. I think the DTZ may have been enacted somewhere around either 2007 or 2010. I cannot
All right,
remember.
so
before my
this is
time.
probably not an issue.
It was, however, open space was put into the APFO before the current 98-23 by
Okay.
close to 3 years.
Right, so I don't think we're doing a disservice to any
All right. That helps.
property owners.
So looking ahead, because we're only working now with the downtown zone in the ordinance, looking ahead with things that might occur if we go to the mixed use, then those sections, those zones are going to have to be added to this, correct? Or do we use the same formula for everything?
So for the mixed use, we're working on some changes to that currently,
Okay,
and we'll probably come back to you on that.
as far as the
near
open
future.
space is concerned.
Right, just the whole mixed use.
No, as far as the open space is concerned.
That includes.
We still have the mixed use, we haven't given it to the town yet.
Correct. So,
Thank you.
Okay, so the current MXD draft, the MXD, has a open space provision in it.
That's what I thought. Okay.
I don't know where it is in here, but I think that there's something that I still would like clarified. And so what this is doing is it's lowering the threshold for when we can grant a waiver. But where does that threshold kick in
Right.
compared to where it is now in this new ordinance?
How does the threshold?
When does that kick in?
So we're talking about for when you have commercial that goes
Right,
along,
right.
rather, if it's all residential, then
This
basically it's,
doesn't apply then, right?
it's what the 3 acres per 100
Yeah.
people, right?
Right.
If you add commercial, the more commercial you add,
So
the
it's-
less
okay.
the requirement will be for open space.
So it doesn't
Because in the
matter
downtown
what the
zone, you're
size
trying
of
to
the
promote
parcel.
the commercial.
Right, right.
Um,
So it really applies to everyone in downtown zone, and if they have commercial, okay.
Right, and not that it has to be all commercial, it's
No,
just,
yeah.
you know, I think it comes out to like if you had 1 floor commercial, 2 floors residential, you'll get down close to the minimum of what you need for, which is the
The
5%.
Right,
Yeah.
okay. All right, thank you.
Okay. All right,
Okay.
I'm getting more comfortable.
Yeah, I'm feeling a little better about this. The light bulb gets brighter and brighter and brighter. Does anybody else have any questions, concerns, suggestions? I mean, are you comfortable with this?
Barney, can you elaborate a little bit more on the possibility of a waiver or exemption, like for the small parcels?
I mean, I guess you could certainly, unless you know something I'm just thinking out loud, if you said any parcel that's below 5,000 square foot wouldn't even have to do 5%, would just be waived altogether.
Thinking about that, kind of thinking ahead, what would be the downfall of that? Like what?
That's appropriate.
But the open space would be insignificant. It would be an insignificant contribution, even if you had a formula. So, so all you're doing is hurting the property owner from, developing their space
Well,
effectively.
I have a question about that. So I'm not talking about the bigger ones, but even these smaller ones, would they potentially have parking as part of their redevelopment?
I don't know what that's.
So parking is always a requirement for a
So I
redevelopment.
think that, and some places do this, have been doing this in more recent years, to have even walkways, maybe even some grass walkways in the parking lot, right? Rather than just full concrete, could be that small amount of like open space. So it's connecting, so people can actually walk on a sidewalk, or like Weiss has, for this, they have like 10 feet of it, and Safeway does has like
Yeah.
5 feet of it. But it would be really great when you're walking through parking lots if you have more of a pathway. It breaks it up. It's just safer, and it looks better, and it's more
But
aesthetic.
that doesn't count as open space, right?
Well, that's what I'm saying. You could say if it's less than 5,000 square feet, you do that. If you don't want to put in a pergola, you do something like that.
Well, but you think about it, Browning and Regal, they don't have their own parking. They utilize the municipal lot.
Well, that's what I was asking, if they were going to have parking. So this would be for places that have parking. I mean,
Keeping in mind, our code under the parking section does allow, if you have a municipal lot within, I think, 1,000 feet of your property, that as long as there's adequate spaces there, you can count that towards it. If it's a redevelopment, they already have some parking associated with that property, probably at the municipal lot or on-street parking. So you would subtract whatever they have existing from the new development. So unless they're expanding their building, they might have
They might
just the
not.
same parking requirement, which means they wouldn't have to add any.
right. That was why I prefaced my question with, are there going to be parking lots
Yeah.
So they wouldn't even
in
need
the
to,
redevelopment?
Yes.
so they might not even need to provide even with the formula we were talking about, the 250 square feet, they might not even need to provide that. Or would they still have to provide that?
For the open space?
Mm-hmm.
I think they would
Mm-hmm.
have to require it unless you give them
An
for
exemption.
a certain size.
I have a question. if whoever's coming in and developing, do we give them any kind of credit for if they decide to use solar or put sod on their roof, or would that knock something off the formula if they're not putting any kind of drain on the grid, or?
There's nothing written into this ordinance for that currently.
Right, but there could be.
There
That's a good idea.
Could
Right.
be, because if they're more green and they're LEED certified buildings or whatever it is, then maybe we could give that more of a consideration for open space, or if they had like a garden on the roof of the building or whatever.
Well, that really
Like, that's,
could be open space.
Yeah,
if
like-
you have-
Yeah, the garden, the rooftop garden,
you
definitely.
know, yeah, to help the building heated.
So it's alternatives, actually.
Yeah, alternative energy maybe to contribute, you know.
I'm not sure if your mic is on.
Oh,
Or else you're.
it's green.
It's not.
You're not
We
close
just
enough.
can't
Still
hear you.
new, okay.
I'd be in the mic police
It's not
tonight.
working now, sorry, sorry. But yeah, if they did green alternatives, maybe we
Okay.
could give them more
I've
credit.
said that before, and then people have said, no, we're
Yeah,
not
that's a
being
good
taped, it's a
idea.
workshop.
Be on YouTube tomorrow.
So I'm getting slowly more comfortable with this. Does anyone have additional concerns? I mean, if so, let us hear them, because that helps all of us.
Only that I would like to explore or consider an exemption for the smaller parcels.
Mhm.
And am not interested in exempting them, but I'm interested in providing that they can do an alternative type thing. Some
Now
type
the-
of environmental.
Now the green space, the open space, I think the purpose is to, I think that's a great idea. But the open space, I think, has a different intention than the environmental contribution or lack thereof. So while I love that idea, Martina, I think the intention of the open space may be different. It's about, like, being able to enjoy open space. So we shouldn't blur those.
Well,
do-
I mean, we can propose what we want and
Yeah.
council, so it doesn't really, I mean, I know we can ask Pat because he was involved in the open space ordinance.
I mean, unless,
it doesn't
unless the open space is contributing to like runoff or rainwater, stormwater contributions.
Well, they have to do that stuff
I mean,
anyway.
if that is
Yeah.
a big factor of the open space, then that would
Yeah.
matter, with like vegetative
that's-
roofs and stuff. So,
Yeah, like,
So it could be an incentive.
Yeah.
It could be an alternative.
it's a great idea. Whether it fits in here or not, it's a great idea.
Yeah.
So, I mean, but
And we have like Barney said, it's not a requirement, but it could
Right.
be a boost to whatever design is going in, if it's more
Agreed.
environmentally friendly.
This is for public facilities, so like I can't go on your roof and sit on your green grass. So I don't think
Oh,
it
I see,
applies.
right. So it would be something that, a park, like somebody could walk in or something
Right.
like that.
okay, all right, okay.
Interpretation.
Okay, no, good point, thank you, John.
Did you have something too, Barney?
Anything else? Barney?
I was just going to say, I mean, the green thing, well, it's a good idea. It's just adding to the ordinance if you want to kind of, it might complicate more.
Right, delay
Things.
things, yeah.
It
be a
might
new
be easier just to do an
Oh.
exception
I
for,
think it's
Could be another ordinance.
Be another whole thing, and, oh my God.
I like that.
About if you're going to do a waiver for, or an exemption for the 5,000 square foot parcels. I think we should look at each of the parcels and see what's out there and say,
I was gonna
meet all
ask,
the setbacks. I mean, I don't know if it's worth putting that into the ordinance.
Well, we're not voting on anything tonight, right?
we can put it in there.
Recommendations.
We're
back to
just
staff.
So we are-
recommendations.
So we can't give recommendations at this meeting, huh? Okay.
No, but
No.
Could be tax credits too.
It's like up is down.
How many parcels in the downtown area are 5,000 square feet or less?
Lots, it looks like.
we don't have that information currently. We can find out.
Well, I feel, I mean, as far as what we have, I think I feel more comfortable now than I did before. And at our next meeting, then that's when we would make the recommendation to the council, pro or con.
That's what I thought.
So we can still, I mean, we'll be discussing this at the next meeting, so if you want to think about that exemption, I think that's,
John, Barney, is it possible by our next meeting that you could pull together acreage?
You mean any parcel within the DTZ that is less than 5,000?
yeah, just the number.
So, I mean, for perspective, that's like a 70 by 70 square, 70 foot by 70 foot square. So that's
Not very big.
not very big. That's probably, I don't know, maybe, how far away is the glass here?
But to
From the door?
give you an idea, Town Hall is about 2,700 square foot. So if you go all the way back to the end of the property, which is where we have parking out back, and you got the hill that goes down, we're probably under 5,000 square foot
Yeah.
with Town Hall's property. And there's a lot that are, and if you look at on here, if I could pick
Just
out
north of
Town Halls,
1199, I'm pretty sure.
is it 1,200 or,
No, it's north of 1199, right?
no,
so.
that's all the way to Center Street. We might be the 1201. So if you see 1201, right where Park Avenue comes down, map.
It's not old, it's not very small, but
I think what would be most helpful is if we understood the relative size and the number of varying sizes within the downtown zone. So if you did some kind of ranking and you had categories of space, and you helped us understand how many properties in each of those categories, and what does a 5% factor look like as a result? I mean, that's the big picture then.
so you can get some perspective here. So Town Hall on the map here,
We're 240, so parcel 240 is
Right.
just north of P 1166. So if
right,
you head north, which is up North Main, we're parcel number 240. You can barely make it out. It's the little tiny letters there, it says P240.
and you said that's 26?
Across from the gun shop.
Oh, it's this one
That
right here,
is,
right?
Yeah, it's,
this is a 6381 square feet.
what'd you say?
Lot size
Oh,
says
there
it's
it is.
6381,
40?
63.
240, 6831 square feet,
Gotcha.
It's this guy.
which this stuff can be wrong.
Right.
That's not 100%, nor is GIS, but
Right
it is parcel 240,
where I
so you can look in relationship. It's very skinny and narrow and long.
Yeah,
That's what I thought.
I wouldn't have guessed that it's that size. So you're talking about a small
I got it.
plot. I mean, 5,000 square feet is, I mean, like I said, I mean, these are longer than they are wider, but it does not take a lot to get to 5,000 square feet. And I think that is a burden for, to apply that. I mean, an exemption.
Well, I think we need to understand the reality of the downtown zone properties. And then let's, then speak to what's appropriate, ratios and so forth.
Yeah, well, I mean, and just from what John said, if you look at the town hall property here, and you just look at the relative size and you try to apply that across the map, you're going to realize that is small,
Well, that's one of the smaller ones,
right?
aside from the buildings and offices across the street.
So if you like the idea of going with the small parcel, having an exemption, we can write something up. We can share with you what the parcels are in the downtown, and then you can decide at the next meeting what size you would call small parcel.
Right. Yeah, that's what we need to do, I think. Thank you. Go ahead.
Now I'm confused because we're not making a recommendation, but so you're changing it and then you're bringing it back and then we'll be voting on the changes you're making tonight, or we'll be voting on one or the other?
So you're going to vote to make a recommendation, whether this
Right.
is yay or nay,
Exactly.
okay, or whether the town council should have passed it or not.
Right.
You have the option of saying yes, but under the following conditions.
Right, we can put that in there.
Also put in a small
be able to basically vote on
Right,
the way it is now, or, okay,
Right.
Right.
that's fine,
Constructive approach.
that's fine.
yeah.
I think an exemption would be in order, but it's where that exemption lies, right?
Threshold.
So what would help me understand is what percentage of these parcels are at, 3,000, 5,000, 8,000, 10,000? Is that how we're going to express the data? So that we could just see, and I think there should be a pretty clear cutoff as to what we should consider small.
You want to see how many parcels below 10,000 square feet? Is that what you want? I mean, so
Well,
you're saying
it would be,
3,000,
well,
5,000, or
yeah,
just-
the
Okay, full list.
5,000 or less.
5,000 or
Yeah.
less.
Is that,
well, I don't know if 5,000 is the right number. That's what I was getting at.
Oh.
I wanted to see what
Be all the
the,
square footages.
right, and then
You
And
can,
that-
you can determine what
all
that
right,
number.
that's
should be.
fine.
Yes,
That's
that's
good, that's good.
I think there'll be a clear cutoff as to where we should, where the gains are of open space and where it's destructive to a business owner.
Okay, that's good. Thanks, Barney.
Yeah.
And, this map is very helpful, John, because when you look at the variation of the properties in the downtown zone, space-wise, acreage-wise, and you compare that to everything else on this map that's around it,
That's what I was doing.
look at the dissimilarity, look at the variation in the downtown zone. We should be taking this time in consideration. Yep.
Okay. Anything else on this ordinance? Okay, so you'll get that to us for our next meeting. That'll be awesome. The next ordinance we're going into is 2019-13, possible changes to the Town Code Section 112-37.1. And I think included in the packet is the original. You included what Tom sent, right, John?
Correct.
That's the ordinance to 2016-23. That was the original. So Tom, you want to kind of do a brief overview of what we're looking at here?
Sure.
Okay.
This proposed ordinance, I think, was introduced by Councilman Munder. So if I misspeak about your ordinance, let me know. Say something wrong about your ordinance, let me know.
No, I'll trust you.
I think your mic is
As I read this ordinance, it purports to do a couple of things. First, what it does is, with respect to uses of right, it would restore the town code to what it was before the text amendment 2016-23 was enacted. So it would go back to requiring commercial on the first floor. However, the ordinance, as it's written, goes on to say that properties that do not have Main Street or Center Street frontage, there is opportunity by means of special exception to forego the first floor commercial and propose a development or undertake development that is completely residential. So it takes what the code says is a use of right for off Main and Center Street properties in the DTZ and makes that a conditional use. That's what this purports to do. It also purports to change the parking requirements as it's written pretty drastically for residential apartments, condominiums, lofts, et cetera, within the DTZ without frontage on the Main Street or Center Street. They will also say, and I think Councilman Munder has addressed that several times here, that he's, I think, proposed something less than what was originally written as this was referred to you all. And he may have more to talk about on that. I think he provided something in writing and may have some further thoughts on that. I think I've covered basically what it does. It also imposes some other requirements on non-Main Street, Center Street properties within the DTZ. I think there are some, if I recall correctly, some height restrictions. Yeah, those found on the draft, page 4 of 5. That'd be that the property qualifying for that special exception would not allow a structure to exceed the maximum height of 2 stories or 24 feet. And there's a secondary provision that says that uses within the downtown zone shall be allowed an additional 10 feet in height for architectural and/or mechanical appurtenances on the principal structure.
Why was the text amendment ever written? Why was the change made?
So the folks at Prospect, for the Prospect Place development, cold storage, had proposed the text amendment. It was in consultation with folks in the town, including myself, through communications with their counsel in terms of how to draft it. They were interested in building they were off Main Street and Center Street. They were interested in building a purely residential property. Cold storage property had sat vacant for, somebody else can fill in that blank, but a long time without seemingly any activity. And so it was drafted at their request as a text amendment. They applied for it and paid the application fee. It made its way through, first introduced to the town council, referred to this body, though with different members, obviously, and it was approved. So far as I know, I don't think with any dissent, but I could be wrong. And then it went to the town council and was approved. Again, I think that the thinking is you've got to be, I'm not advocating one way or the other, but all I'm reporting to you is what the thinking was. Thinking was you had a piece of property that just sat. So maybe it was an opportunity to bring in development in what was now a part of the DTZ. I should also say that in context, what you should understand is that cold storage was not in the DTZ. Nor to my knowledge was any property off of Main or Center Street until the last master plan, which was 2013 master plan, though passed I think in 2016, and the comprehensive rezonings that occurred in 2016 pursuant to that master plan imposed a DTZ nation.
That's right, because Hill Street was going to be included, and then all
right.
the folks came in and said, no, we don't want to be downtown zone. That's right, yep. So cold storage stayed in the downtown zone at that point.
Very adamant.
Yeah, we took them out. Well, I'm curious about hearing from Carl as to what he wants kept in and the reasons for some of the other things, if he would like to
The rationale for it.
address.
The originator of the, ordinance can talk.
Just speak without being asked to. So, what do you have, Les? What?
Okay, well, we know that, it would restore the code to prior, basically making 2016-23 obsolete. And
Yes.
I just want to make sure he didn't miss anything, that we know everything that's in here. So as far as the parking, that would change to all the other parking that's in the downtown zone, or what?
Hopefully would just attend on the parking. Yes, it would change to the parking for any new developments within the downtown zone that would, hold on a second, let me freshen my memory here on it. It would just apply to developments in the downtown zone which do not have frontage on Main Street or Center Street. So it would just pretty much, it would depend on the address of the properties within the downtown zone.
Say that last thing again? It would what?
It would be dependent upon the address of the properties on the downtown zone, because the ordinance would only apply to downtown zone properties that do not have frontage on Main Street or Center
Is
Street.
that where this entire ordinance applies? Or to just non-center, non-Main Street?
The
Or-
parking aspect of it for this would only apply
Okay,
to,
So, but this ordinance would amend the downtown zone, right?
would amend the parking in the downtown zone.
The downtown zone.
Oh, I understand that the parking would be amended. What I'm
Okay.
saying is this ordinance right here, does this only apply
The ordinance,
to Prospect Street properties?
hold on. What?
Yes.
Yeah.
Park Avenue as well.
Okay, non-Main Street.
Cross
I
Street.
just-
Non-Main Street properties within the downtown, non-Main Street and Center Street properties
see
within the
that, and
downtown
that's-
zone.
Okay, fine. Okay, so, so what you're saying then is that for the parking, it wouldn't be the same as all the other downtown zone parking?
No.
Okay, and why is that?
It's just to make sure that there was enough parking in any type of developments where people would not be ending up parking on side streets.
All right, and
and
why is that different than the other parts of the downtown zone?
Other parts, what do you mean by because it's like some of the properties are a little bit closer to municipal lots. So if there's extra parking, visitors, someone having a party or a get-together, they can use the municipal lots. But as you get farther and farther away from municipal lots, people would have a tendency, in my view, would be more parking on side streets to be closer to their destination of a residence.
Why is that bad? Why is that bad?
It would be bad in this, what do you mean by what, it would be bad in my aspect that people would not be using the municipal lots. They would be parking closer to a residence off of the farther away from, say if you live farther away from the municipal lot, you're having a party. People don't want to park in a municipal lot because it's farther for them to walk or carry something.
Well, that would only apply to Prospect.
It would
because
apply to
it's
maybe
on the Park or next to the municipal lot.
It would apply to some properties on Cross Street and a couple other properties here.
Cross Street's like on the municipal parking lot.
But some back ones, okay, true.
Well,
Only if it's new development.
Yeah, only if it's new development. It would not retro.
Otherwise, they're grandfathered in with existing conditions.
That's my intent. That would normally happen, right? Unless it's,
right, you can't revert back.
yeah, you can't revert back without writing it into the ordinance.
Okay, so, is there any other way that you could address this potential problem?
With the parking issues, the
Yes.
parking question, there are other thoughts on it. It's just a matter of what would work best with town staff. I haven't really talked to town staff on other thoughts I might have on the parking aspect of it, the ratios or anything else. But there are a couple other thoughts
All right, what are they?
in mind. What was that?
What are they?
It would be limiting to maybe, I want to say, it would have a certain threshold, any new development that would have a potential for, 15 units or under would be required to maybe just have 2 additional parking spots for visitors, depending on the number of that. Anything over that would have to have, like, I read in one of the documents I was reading on parking, a ratio of like, I'm going to try and get the wording right, is like 5, it would be, say if you have an X amount of units, the visitors' spots would be 5% related to the unit count that you have. So say if I did something, say if you had, say, 100 spots or something, you would be at 5% of that, you would get roughly, be required maybe 4 to 5 extra spots solely for visitors, because I just want to make sure.
So that would be 2 spaces per unit plus 5 visitor spaces?
No. It could potentially replace some of the existing wording of the
Yeah, and what are you getting
one
rid
space
of?
per bedroom for a residential unit.
Right, so you're
You need
getting
more than
rid
one
of the
bedroom.
3 spaces per unit,
Yeah, it would.
right?
Yeah, each unit would still be required to have the minimum of 2 spaces as in current code. I just want to make sure there's some spaces that are extra there for visitors or any
Right, so
any
that's what
potential time of
so,
overflow.
right, so that's what I just said. You'd have 2 spaces per unit plus 5 visitor, or a percentage of whatever for visitors.
For the total development area, not per unit.
So doesn't our town code already address parking? Right, that's sort of a loaded question because we all know it does. So why are we complicating this?
It's just any potential development could, I'm looking at it from a.
It already addresses parking based on number of residents and space.
No, it addresses just a flat two spots per unit.
Which is
That's it.
probably.
No matter what size, maybe not, because people are staying home longer at different times.
That's part of that whole like formula that Bernie shared with us. So certain parts of the day, more people are home, and other parts of the day, less people are home, and it sort of offsets itself.
It could potentially offset it, but I'm just the type of person that would like to just see a couple more spots.
Yeah, I have a 2-bedroom apartment.
Yeah.
I only have 1 car.
Yes,
So
but you're also, go ahead.
We've done
let me ask
parking
you.
studies.
I know we have.
We don't have a deficiency
No.
per our measurement.
And I want to ask a question. How many developments have you visited to make these determinations?
I've driven by several. I've driven by some and just see some as development. I know townhouse developments are required to have visitor spots. Why shouldn't larger scale developments of large residential areas or any residential area should be required that are rental communities should be allowed to have
Right. But
added development
if
spaces?
this has a commercial component to it, you've got built-in extra spaces because after 5 o'clock, those spaces are not going to be used.
Well, it depends on the business, and it depends on what type of business is in the commercial space. You could have a restaurant that could be open till 10 or 11, so if someone comes home.
But that's not going to occupy all the spaces. I'm sorry. I visit townhouse developments, condo developments almost every day. You are overparking. You're putting way too many spaces. Like we said before, you're using up all the open space with parking. You're going to have nothing but a big driveway, a big macadam, nothing. It's way too many parking spaces.
That is your opinion, and you're allowed to it. I have a different one.
But I want the empirical evidence. Show me someplace else where this works. Show me the empirical evidence.
Every town has a different parking standard. I came across stuff that had a third of a spot, a half of a spot. It
Okay,
depends on
that's
the
why
town.
I'm asking you to show it to me. Show it to me in writing. What do they have? What do they say?
There was no set. Every town has a different standard. Even within Carroll County, I came across different towns when I searched Tawnytown, Manchester. Everything else had any spots from 1 to 3 required spots. per unit.
Right, but as Pam
For
already pointed
residential.
out, we have a standard as well.
We have a
this
standard
town.
too, but how old is that standard?
Well,
I always thought there was too much parking in our in our parking standard.
And
but-
paving over with macadam, parking spots, parking lots, extra spots can be developed in a way to allow, I want to say permeable pavers, permeable concrete, and things of that nature.
well, Carl, I'm not convinced that what we have is broken.
Right.
I don't see evidence, and certainly our parking studies have shown that we don't have enough
Have you-
demand. So I'm saying it ain't broken yet.
Are we waiting to fix are we waiting till it is broken and then fix it? But then it could be all developed and there is no parking, there is no room left for additional parking. And it's a shame that you're focusing just on the parking on this ordinance.
Oh, no, we're going to keep
Well, no,
going.
we're-
just on
this
the
is
That's
parking
fine.
now. We're on the
That's where
parking
we're
now.
starting, Carl.
Yeah.
Well, that's fine.
That's page 2.
But the
You on
last
page
two festivals that have been held downtown, I do recall that parking was a nightmare on the side streets.
But you can't, but it's a fest, that's different. You've got to talk about normal daytime comings and goings, wear and tear. You can't say the festival, you can't put that in there.
Right, and when there's an accident on
Or
27,
when, right,
Main
you've
Street
gotta
is totally
go
backed up. What are we
normal
gonna do?
activity.
That may be 5% of the year.
All right, so,
And
should
you want to
we-
hold
You go
more, so
on.
it
Yeah,
will
you have
become
other
more.
questions, go on.
All right, I think, Roxanne, I think we're ready to move on beyond parking, is that right?
Yes, yes, yes.
I just wanted to make sure I understood the other changes. All right, so you could have it's a special exception? Is that it?
For the residential, yes.
Okay, and that would again just be in the non-Main Street, non-Center Street?
Yes, areas. I
So,
believe. Hold on, let me just,
I don't,
Page 4.
yes, for
so,
solely residential use.
all right, and just out of curiosity, why did you add this?
A special exception, just to make sure that someone could have a potential other use, let's say if the property is not designed or does not work with a commercial application, they could still have a way of applying for a solely residential.
Do that on Main Street or Center Street?
What do you mean can't? Yes, well, that's under current code. Is that Center Street and Main Street?
Well,
needs
this
to-
is changing current code, right? We're amending the code.
Well, there you
here.
guys say that do not have frontage on Main Street or Center Street.
Right, but all the downtown zone is currently under the same requirements. You're changing just for non-Main
Okay,
Street,
yes.
non-Center Street, okay.
I
So why,
believe so.
Why? I don't see the need.
I believe that's what the 2016-23
yeah,
did.
I mean, right,
Okay,
but
all
you-
right,
you
just
want-
wanted to
you
verify
wanna-
that, okay, yes.
yeah, you want that repealed, so you basically just don't, so your issue with that is just that you didn't want it to be a use of right. You wanted
Be a
someone to
special
have to go through
exception.
special
Yes.
exception.
So
Okay,
that way it would allow property owner.
okay, that was just what I was trying to
Okay,
figure out.
thank
That's
you.
why you did that. Okay,
Yes.
I get that now. Do you guys?
More to allow, just more to allow someone ability to do something if they can't, if it doesn't work for them.
Now, I think when Tom was going through this, he said something about height restrictions.
It was a height restriction of 24 feet with an additional 10 feet, which I believe is in current code.
Is that the same as other downtown zone? Like, do we know?
I
Remember what?
did pull and place it from existing town code. I can't remember the exact, but I believe it was under the special exception portion of the code, Barney.
Well, he's looking it up, but
Yeah. There's someone under the current special exceptions.
11237.
I think it's 11253, is that what,
Yeah, I think it's probably 11237.
okay.
I'm trying to pull it up now.
I'm looking for the code book. Oh, no, we have one here for the town, where is it?
I think it's
Oh, they've got it,
under there.
okay.
G, building height, uses within the downtown zone shall observe the following height restrictions. The minimum height, 2 stories or 24 feet. Maximum height, 3 stories or 40 feet.
Wait, so which is it? Is it 3 stories, 40 feet, or?
40 feet, yeah,
Maximum. is
maximum.
3 stories or 40 feet.
So just to be clear, town code allows for 3 stories
Yes.
In the
Li-
downtown zone.
in the downtown zone, and
downtown
you're
zone.
saying this would limit it to?
This would limit
Two
it to
stories.
24 feet, anything that would, so it could be more,
Right.
I want to say more in tune with any potential development along,
Okay, so
that could be surrounding it.
you heard this whole discussion
Hold on,
about,
Martina, can you speak?
you just heard this whole discussion about open space. So if you limit it to 2 stories, and I'm just thinking if you do 3 stories, it would fit more stuff in a compacted space, and then we would have more room for open space. So if you limit the height, you might put limits on other sections that would need to be filled.
Potentially, but sometimes 3-story buildings or things would not be, I want to say, cohesive with surrounding properties. If you have potential for a lot of single-family homes around, and also you plop 3 stories in somewhere, it wouldn't look right, and it would do I want to say, a dysfunction.
So it's an
to town.
aesthetic thing?
What was that?
It's
aesthetic, yes,
So-
more so than
Carl,
trying to.
if you go by the ordinance, right, and we try to build on this, and we try to,
Yeah.
build, an apartment or something. I mean, you're looking at like you're putting like 15 apartments that have 50 parking spots. Like, doesn't that sound a little silly?
Well, the parking can change. I'm not saying the parking.
Well, I don't want to go back on the parking.
No,
I'm
I
just
know,
saying
but I
we're
know.
Don't go to
limiting-
Well,
parking
currently,
right now.
you had
We're- I mean-
15, you're talking 30 spots.
But I guess what I'm saying is that formula does not contribute to the economic growth or sustainability of the town.
No,
Right?
as I said, it's like when I first drafted the ordinance, it didn't come out the way I intended it, that aspect of it. And then upon further reflection and insight and talking with some other people, I lowered it and I realized that that's still not, conducive to, as you said, the economic aspect of town. I mean, I can discuss and talk about maybe lowering. I just want to make sure that there's, just in case there's a full, for some reason, depending on the commercial, that there could be something. And if there is commercial on it, then that might take care of, add the extra spots that would be required. So it all kind of depends on the use of the building. If it's solely residential, you could have potential less spots.
I'm a fan of mixed use.
Yeah. But, I mean, no, it's 50 spots for 15 spots apartments would be kind of ridiculous. And that's what, after reflecting upon it, that's why I'm willing to change it and alter it. So I'm not set on that.
I have a question. Is your proposal for the 2-story maximum, is that only under the special exception? So it's only if someone wanted to do purely residential that they'd be limited to
Yes.
24 feet, 2 stories?
Yes.
So if there were commercial on the first floor, then the max would be the 40 feet, 3
Correct.
stories? Okay.
Kind of like what's currently downtown.
Consistent across the board. If our downtown zone says 3 stories, 40 feet, we should be consistent.
It's interesting because on one hand, that seems like a rational argument.
Yeah.
On the other hand, we have limited space in the downtown zone, and mixed use allows a lower parking requirement, whereas all residential requires more. It takes up more space for parking. It also, it may come with a recommendation for more units, which may not satisfy the APFO.
But I thought Pam was addressing the stories,
Right.
the 40,
The
the
height,
height, not the
The
parking.
conformity, yeah.
But it's part of the same big picture.
I personally, because we've had text amendments on this ordinance and back and forth, I just want to scrap this and go back to what was the original, the 2016-23. I just don't see why we need to keep, piling stuff on this ordinance. And, I mean, you look at the vision plan, and yes, we have to have revisions to existing zoning, but, there's a lot of other things that are going to start happening, and I just think we just scrap it and go to the original. I'm for recommending not going through with that. I don't recommend that amendment, ordinance at all.
Okay.
Go ahead, Leslie.
So I somewhat agree. 'Cause, I would certainly keep all the parking the same as the downtown zone. And so like my only question is whether that special exception should be allowed to exist. But it would basically be, yes, whatever you call it, repealing the 2016-23. It seems like you could do that. I'm not saying, I'm not even sure if I agree with that or not, but you could incentivize the developer to have the commercial by making that more attractive, both because you get credit for the open space and you get the higher, maximum height. So, like I'd have to think about it. That's one thing that I would consider, but I don't really see any reason at all to have changes to the parking. So yeah, most of it is just overlap.
Real quick.
Yeah.
And I make this statement because I wasn't on town council 2 years ago. But if you look at the date of this, 2 years ago, and I'm talking about the text amendment, whoever was on planning commission or town council 2 years ago recommended and approved this text amendment. I would, I don't say if I agree or disagree with it, but I think that has, and now we're saying 2 years later, we don't agree with it.
I started rethinking it shortly after.
Yeah,
it
I did
passed.
too.
In the larger scheme of things, and with an objective of fostering and supporting, more commercial development, but mixed use in the sense of MXD, and the whole reason why we proposed it for Center Street Beck property, as an example, because of the proximity to downtown, that was a fit. In retrospect, looking at that bigger picture, I felt like we erred in approving the text amendment.
And we're not perfect. And one thing that this does, I think, is the old one, keeping it, as it was. Maybe it can foster, granted, maybe retail spaces might not want to go there, but, we're trying to get more retail on the Main Street part. Maybe this would encourage, and we could incentivize some of our service people that have storefront, retail front footage to maybe relocate there. And they don't necessarily need, I shouldn't say it that way. They don't necessarily need they don't need the foot traffic like the retail does. That might be a way to incentivize some of them to allow their spaces for retail. But,
I mean, sorry, I'm fine if you choose to just, I would say alter it, just say, return it back to the way it was under 2016-23 on this, and we can work out differences at a later date or something. So, I mean, that's fine with me. I would take no offense that if you just chose to recommend, strike everything and just leave it as, revert back to commercial only on first floor buildings, which is that allowed under this? Was that procedurally correct?
I don't think we're done discussing.
We're not I mean, we're not going to make a decision tonight. 'cause
I'm
we
just
do-
saying-
we
I'm just
But
saying
this is a
That's
thought
something-
process, I
that's something
think.
for you to consider.
Yeah, I think we've already,
Okay.
considered. So
Okay.
Pam, well, point taken, I mean, it's a good question. And I think part of the, and I don't know, I can't like rethink the whole process, but part of the change is that, when developers, wanted to do all residential and then realized there was going to be some negative consequences to that. And it was, well, you can't have your cake and eat it too, right? You want to be all residential, then you have to comply with all of the requirements of residential. So it got a little bit messy. I mean, the one thing that I can kind of appreciate, the one thing, Carl,
That's fine.
of this proposed ordinance is to just make that not a right, a use of right, whatever, right of use, whatever, but to make it a special exception. And that way, it's there as a possibility. It's not completely being taken away, but it's not as of right. And, then maybe some of these other things can be balanced out, or, and again, as I said, incentivize some of this possible commercial, or, to do the commercial or something like that. I mean, and I know we're not talking about any particular space or anything, but the project has some great attributes, like connecting rails to trails and things like that.
Yep.
That I think are pretty, could do a lot of positive for this town. So, so I guess I would go with, just revising, repealing 2016-23 and incorporating the special exception. But of course, we'd have to look at that very closely, that language, and so that's my thought.
Yeah, I think that's a good compromise. Any other questions? Any other concerns? Okay, thanks, Carl.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you. Sorry about my terse
That's all right.
voice there.
Gotta behave.
This is just something to think about. I'm going to revert back. I'm sorry. I didn't pull this out first, but if you look at the vision plan, one of the things it says is the open space alternative compliance. If you go back and read that, I don't want to start a discussion, but if you go back and read, it talks about allowing for alternative compliance to meet the open space requirement. And it does state here that open space should equate to approximately 5 to 8% of the developable land area. And I think that's kind of what we're thinking about, talking about as far as the equation was. And, we needed to look right here. We got to remember we've got all these things and we don't look at them enough to help us out. I don't have anything else. I mean, this was all that was on for
Look at that.
for the which is I appreciate the hard work and coming in early and doing anything, and I appreciate the audience as well, listening to our waxings and wanings.
One thing I'd like to request, if possible, in advance of our meeting this month, if we could have a copy of the MXD.
Our draft.
Yep. I'm not sure where my original is, and I'd like to go back and revisit it. So that would be useful.
Well, the MXD you're working on is different, right? Or is,
Should I kind of expand and explain, or would you like to come?
But
So Councilman Munder and I met with the town staff, including the town attorney, Barney, John, and the town administrator. It sort of started so that I could get a better understanding of Center Street, where we were at, how we move forward. It was also when we were talking about 2019-12, I needed to understand what MXUCC was, and how MXD was different. So in that meeting, Barney has the draft that you all worked on 2 years ago, and he's kind of flipping through the code book and redlining it, and we start talking about it, and kind of everyone in the room agreed that what you all worked on 2 years ago was pretty darn good and pretty close to you know, ready to be introduced. So we all kind of agreed that Barney and John would continue kind of editing and tweaking just a little bit, introduce it to town council in January, kick it back to you guys at the next meeting to sort of start the process again, which will kind of expedite the process because then that gives you 60 days. Yep. So that's kind of where that's at.
Except we're the ones who prefer things.
well, we technically did work on it for quite a long time.
yeah,
So they're
it's,
not rewriting what you all did. It's going to be introduced to town council.
Yeah.
Council is going to kick it. Council is, it's basically, what you guys worked on is basically going to be introduced to town council, and kick back to you guys to give you 60 days to review it, make
Okay.
recommendations.
Great. All right, thanks. Thanks for the update.
That is, so it's going to be introduced in December or January?
January.
Okay.
January is
I didn't
what
hear
we
the
talked
date,
about.
so I just want to make sure.
It should be January after we all have time to discuss it.
Right.
Introdu-
About it and go from there, but, sorry. At the January meeting, if everything works right.
I'd still like, as a planning commission, to have that, to look at it, please, before, and I'm kind of partial to this because we have worked a lot on it. I would like the recommendation to
Right.
send it to
Maybe
town
I
council.
chaired that subcommittee.
I'm sorry? It's a, yeah,
I said I chaired that subcommittee.
right, exactly. I mean, so I would,
So the goal is to get it done, put a timestamp on it. And that's kind of what we did in that meeting. Nobody is taking the thunder from you all. You all wrote it, you all worked on it.
no, I just,
Recognize that, but we as town council made a promise to the citizens that we would be proactive in the Center Street extension, and the zoning is the first thing that needs to be done. So we
MXD
are-
is part of the extension. It can
Right.
help, hurt, or whatever. So,
So
that's why I just like to.
yeah.
That's true. Absolutely. Okay. Got anything else? No?
Else? I just want to say something, if, this is off topic, but if anybody asks, if you're driving down 27, you might want to answer to this. It's on the website too, but I just want to mention it. There is stormwater activity going on Harrison Leisure, and it's because houses on Butler Road, correct me if I'm wrong, have had water issues in them, and they need to do some stormwater management and mitigation to help to do those, to keep the water from coming into those houses. So if anybody asks you if there's something going on, you can actually refer them to the website or say it's just the county has got to do some mitigation to prevent the water from coming into the houses.
It's not like they're taking action.
Right, they're not taking action on anything.
And there's no structures that are.
No
proposed?
structures or anything are going to happen.
Developing Harris Illustrated?
No, not today.
No developing, no. It's a mitigation process. Do I hear a motion, I guess? Seeing what, are we all ready?
I second.
It's been moved and seconded. We adjourn the workshop. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Thank you. Thank you for all your hard work.